If you're at home when World War III starts, this will happen. You're sitting on your couch right now, maybe eating dinner, maybe scrolling your phone, and somewhere across the world, a nuclear submarine just received an order. You have approximately 30 minutes to live, and you don't even know it yet. Now, if that just made your heart skip a beat, you're going to want to stick around for this entire video, because what I'm about to reveal to you is not some Hollywood fantasy. This is what military strategists, government insiders, and emergency planners have spent decades preparing for, and most of it they've kept hidden from you. It's an ordinary Tuesday evening. Maybe it's winter, maybe it's summer, doesn't matter. You've just gotten home from work. Your shoes are off. The TV is playing some background noise you're not really paying attention to. Your phone buzzes with some meaningless notification. And somewhere, in a government building you've never heard of, an alert level just changed from DEFCON 3 to DEFCON 2. You have no idea. No one around you has any idea, because the government doesn't announce these things in real time. By the time you find out, the dominoes are already falling. See, here's what most people don't understand about World War III. It won't start with some dramatic announcement. There won't be a press conference where the president comes on and says, "Hey everyone, war is starting tomorrow." No. Modern warfare operates on a completely different timeline, and that timeline is measured in minutes. Not days, not hours, minutes. The first sign something is wrong might be subtle. Your internet connection starts lagging, not crashing completely, just enough to be annoying. You might think it's your router. Maybe you restart it. But what you don't know is that cyber attacks have already begun targeting infrastructure across the country. Power grids, communication networks, financial systems. These attacks happen silently, invisibly, and they're designed to create confusion before the real strike comes. Then your phone does something strange. Maybe it buzzes with an emergency alert, one of those loud, jarring sounds that makes everyone in the room freeze. You look down at it expecting some Amber Alert or weather warning, but instead, the message says something different, something you've never seen before, and in that moment, your blood runs cold. Now let me be extremely clear about something. What I'm describing isn't speculation. Military planners have gamed these scenarios thousands of times. They've created detailed timelines of what happens minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. And what they've discovered is terrifying, because the average citizen is completely unprepared for what's coming. Let's talk about the first 60 minutes, because these are the most critical 60 minutes of your entire life, and most people will waste them. When that emergency alert hits your phone, you're going to experience something called normalcy bias. This is a psychological phenomenon where your brain refuses to accept that something catastrophic is happening. You've spent your entire life in relative peace. Your brain is wired to assume that pattern will continue. So even when sirens are blaring and alerts are flashing, a part of you will be convinced that this isn't real. This is a drill. This is a mistake. This can't actually be happening. And while you're standing there frozen, trying to process what's going on, precious minutes are ticking away. Minutes you can never get back. The people who survive what's coming aren't the ones with the most supplies. They're the ones who can break through that mental paralysis fastest. They're the ones who accept reality while everyone else is still in denial. And that mental preparation starts right now, right here, in this video. So let's talk about what actually happens when war breaks out. The first thing you need to understand is that modern warfare doesn't look like World War II. There won't be tanks rolling down Main Street, at least not at first. The initial phase of a major conflict is all about disruption. It's about breaking down the systems that hold society together. Within the first hour, you're likely to experience power outages. Not everywhere at once. That would be too obvious. Strategic outages designed to overwhelm repair crews and create maximum confusion. Some neighborhoods have power, some don't, no one knows why. Emergency services are flooded with calls. The 911 system starts backing up. Wait times that used to be seconds become minutes, then tens of minutes. Then the system might go down entirely in certain areas. Your phone becomes your lifeline. But here's the problem. Cell towers can only handle so much traffic. When everyone in your city tries to make calls and send texts at the same time, the network collapses. You're staring at your phone watching those messages fail to send, watching those calls go nowhere, and the isolation begins to set in. Now here's where things get really interesting, and this is something most people never think about. Your home, the place you feel safest, can become either your fortress or your tomb. It depends entirely on what you do in those first few hours. Let me ask you something. Right now, without moving from where you're sitting, do you know where your flashlights are? Do you know if the batteries in them actually work? Do you have water that doesn't come from a tap? Because in a major conflict scenario, municipal water systems are a primary target. Not necessarily to poison them, but to shut them down, to create chaos, to make people desperate. A desperate population is a controllable population. Remember that. But here's the twist that most preppers and survival channels never tell you about. The greatest threat to your survival isn't the initial attack. It's not the bombs or the missiles or whatever kinetic weapons might be deployed. The greatest threat is what happens in the hours and days after, when the veneer of civilization starts to crack. See, we like to believe that people are fundamentally good, and many of them are. But we also know that people behave very differently when they're scared, when they're hungry, when they're protecting their families. The social contracts that keep our society functioning are based on mutual agreements. We agree to follow laws because we believe others will too. We agree to wait in lines because we believe everyone else will wait as well. But when those agreements start breaking down, when people realize the police aren't coming, when they realize the stores aren't restocking, when they realize no one is in control anymore, something primal takes over. And that's when your friendly neighborhood becomes something else entirely. Now, I'm not saying everyone becomes a monster. That's not how it works. But I am saying that the rules change quickly. And the people who understand how the new rules work are the ones who navigate through the chaos. So let's walk through the timeline, hour by hour, because understanding this timeline could literally save your life. Hour 0, the alert goes out. Most people ignore it or dismiss it. They assume it's a false alarm. They go back to whatever they were doing. These are the people who will be caught completely off guard by what comes next. Hour 1, confirmation starts spreading, maybe through social media, maybe through word of mouth, maybe through a presidential address that interrupts all broadcasting. The reality begins to sink in, and this is when the first wave of panic buying starts. People flood to grocery stores, gas stations, pharmacies. Within 90 minutes, shelves that were full this morning are completely empty. Gas stations have lines wrapping around the block. And here's the thing, if you're in that line, you're already too late. Hour 2 to hour 6, this is what military planners call the chaos window. The government is scrambling to implement emergency protocols. Local authorities are overwhelmed. The gap between what's happening and what anyone can control grows wider by the minute. This is the window where most people make fatal mistakes. They leave their homes seeking supplies or information. They travel toward the danger instead of away from it. They make themselves vulnerable at the exact moment when staying put would have kept them safe. Now here's something crucial you need to understand. In a genuine World War III scenario, there's a very specific decision you need to make in the first 2 hours. And that decision is whether to shelter in place or evacuate. Both options have pros and cons, and choosing wrong could cost you everything. If the threat is nuclear, your decision depends heavily on where you live. If you're within a certain radius of a likely target, a military base, a major city center, key infrastructure, then sheltering in place might mean sheltering in a vaporization zone. But if you're far enough away, trying to evacuate into packed highways full of panicking drivers might be the more dangerous option. See, this is where the real preparation matters. Not the physical preparation, the mental preparation. The information gathering you do right now, in peacetime, when your brain can actually think clearly. You need to know your options before crisis hits. Because when that alert goes out, your rational brain is going to be fighting against a flood of cortisol and adrenaline. You won't be able to think clearly. You'll rely on instinct. And if your instinct isn't trained, it will fail you. But here's the part that very few people talk about. And I'm going to say it might be the most important thing in this entire video. So pay close attention. The single biggest factor in your survival isn't location. It isn't supplies. It isn't even training. The single biggest factor is your network, the people around you, your community. Lone wolf survivors make great movie characters, but in reality they don't last long. Human beings are tribal creatures. We survive in groups. We protect each other. We share resources and information. We take turns staying alert while others sleep. The fantasy of the solo prepper with a bunker full of canned goods and ammunition might sound appealing, but the statistics tell a different story. In every major crisis throughout history, from natural disasters to wartime, The people who survived were the ones embedded in functional communities. So right now, today, your survival preparation should include building relationships, getting to know your neighbors, understanding who around you has useful skills, who's a nurse, who's an electrician, who knows how to fix things, who has a generator, who has extra space, who can you trust when everything falls apart. These questions feel awkward to ask in normal times, but they become the most important questions in the world when crisis hits. Now let me take you deeper into the timeline, because we've only covered the first 6 hours, and what comes after is where things get truly intense. Day 1. By the end of the first full day, the initial shock has worn off slightly. People are beginning to process what's happening, but they're also beginning to realize something terrifying. Help isn't coming, at least not quickly. Emergency services are stretched beyond capacity. National Guard units are being deployed, but they're focused on critical infrastructure, not individual neighborhoods. The government is operating in crisis mode, which means information is scarce and often contradictory. This is when you'll see the first signs of social fracturing. Some neighborhoods will come together, others will splinter. The ones that come together are the ones where people know each other, where there's already some level of trust and communication. The ones that splinter are the ones where everyone has been living as isolated individuals, strangers sharing a zip code. Day 2 through day 7. This is what I call the adjustment period. By now, power may have been restored in some areas, or it may be gone for good in others. The patchwork nature of the crisis becomes apparent. Some places seem almost normal, others look like war zones. People begin to realize that the government cannot rescue everyone, that the cavalry isn't coming, and they start making decisions based on that reality. This is the period where supplies become currency, where the things you stockpiled become incredibly valuable, not because money has lost all meaning, though that could happen too, but because the supply chains have been disrupted. The trucks aren't running, the stores aren't restocking. Whatever exists locally is all that exists, and everyone realizes this at roughly the same time. Water becomes critical around day 3. The average person can survive without food for weeks. But water, you've got about 3 days before dehydration becomes a serious problem. And if the taps have stopped working, if the power is out and the pumping stations have failed, then those 3 days become a countdown clock. One that most people never even thought about until it's too late. Now here's something that sounds almost absurd, but it's absolutely true. In World War III scenario studies, one of the biggest predictors of survival isn't geography or resources, it's knowledge. Specifically, knowing things that most people don't. For example, most people don't know that their water heater contains 30 to 50 gallons of drinkable water that can be accessed even when the plumbing stops working. Most people don't know that you can filter water through sand and charcoal and make it safe to drink. Most people don't know that their car battery can power small devices for days if you know how to connect them properly. Most people don't know that the food in their freezer, if they keep it closed, can stay safe for up to 48 hours even without power. This knowledge is free, it's accessible. It's the difference between panic and problem solving. And yet most people will never bother to learn it until they desperately need it and can't access it anymore. Let me share something with you that military planners discovered decades ago. In their simulations, they found that during extended crisis periods, society doesn't collapse into total chaos. What happens instead is that society reorganizes. It finds new equilibrium points, new leaders emerge, new rules develop. It's not a return to the Stone Age. It's more like a rapid evolution into a different kind of social structure. The question isn't whether society will reorganize. The question is where you'll be positioned when it does. Will you be one of the people helping to shape the new order? Or will you be dependent on whoever takes control? Now let's talk about something that people find really uncomfortable. The psychological impact of prolonged crisis. Because surviving physically is only half the battle. Human beings are not built for extended periods of uncertainty and fear. Our stress response systems evolved for short-term threats, a predator, a rival tribe, something that either kills you quickly or passes. We are not evolved to handle months or years of constant low-level threat. And that's exactly what a World War III scenario would create. You'll see people who seemed strong and capable start to crack under the pressure. You'll see people who seemed weak and timid rise to the occasion. The person you thought would be your rock might crumble. The person you overlooked might become your salvation. Crisis reveals character in ways that ordinary life never does. This is why mental health preparation is just as important as physical preparation. Developing coping mechanisms now, building emotional resilience now, learning how to manage fear and uncertainty now. These skills become invaluable when the world stops making sense. But here's where I want to shift gears slightly, because I've spent a lot of time talking about the dark possibilities. And I want to balance that with something else, something that might surprise you. In every major crisis throughout human history, amid all the suffering and loss and chaos, something remarkable has always emerged. Extraordinary acts of courage, profound expressions of humanity, strangers helping strangers, communities coming together, people discovering capabilities they never knew they had. The worst times in human history have also produced some of the most inspiring stories of human behavior. So yes, World War III would be devastating. It would challenge everything we take for granted. It would break systems and structures that have taken decades to build. But it would not break the human spirit, at least not permanently. And understanding that, really internalizing it, is part of the mental preparation I've been talking about. The people who survive and thrive in crisis are the ones who maintain hope. Not blind, naive hope, but realistic hope. The kind that says, yes, this is terrible, but we will get through it. We will adapt, we will rebuild. That mindset is contagious. It spreads through communities, and it creates the conditions for survival and recovery. Now I want to get practical with you for a moment, because I know some of you are watching this and thinking, okay, I hear what you're saying, but what do I actually do? So let me give you some concrete steps. First, assess your current situation honestly. Where do you live in relation to potential targets? What are your local resources? What are your personal vulnerabilities? What are your strengths? Write this down. Make it real. Second, build a basic emergency kit, not a bunker full of supplies. Just the basics: 72 hours worth of water, food, first aid, flashlights, batteries, a hand crank radio, copies of important documents. This isn't paranoia. It's basic common sense that every emergency management agency in the world recommends. Third, have a plan. Where will you go if you need to evacuate? How will you communicate with family members if phones don't work? Where will you meet if you get separated? These conversations feel silly to have when everything is fine, but they become critical when everything isn't. Fourth, start building that community network I mentioned earlier. Get to know the people around you. Join local groups. Volunteer for community organizations. These connections might save your life someday. And even if they don't, they'll make your regular life better anyway. Fifth, keep learning. Watch videos like this one. Read books about survival and crisis management. Take a first aid course. Learn basic repair skills. The more you know, the more options you'll have when things go wrong. But here's the final piece, and this is maybe the most important thing I'm going to say. After all this preparation, live your life. Don't become so consumed by fear of what might happen that you forget to enjoy what is happening. The purpose of preparation isn't to spend your life waiting for disaster. It's to free yourself from the anxiety so you can fully engage with the present. The person who has a good emergency plan doesn't spend every day worrying about emergencies. They spend every day living freely because they know they're ready. That's the goal. That's what we're aiming for. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to address something that I know some of you are thinking. You're thinking this guy is fear-mongering. World War III isn't going to happen. Everything is fine. And maybe you're right. I hope you're right. But here's what I know for certain. Every generation before us believed they were living in stable times. Until they weren't. Our grandparents and great-grandparents thought the same things. And then World War II happened. And the Cold War, and 9/11, and the pandemic. History doesn't move in straight lines. It lurches forward, then suddenly breaks, then reforms into something new. We are living in a time of unprecedented tension, multiple nuclear powers, shifting alliances, economic instability, climate stress. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are documented facts that world leaders discuss openly. Hoping for the best is wonderful, but preparing for challenges is wisdom. And here's the irony. The more prepared we are as individuals and communities, the less likely catastrophe becomes. Because prepared populations don't panic. They don't make desperate decisions that escalate situations. They respond with clarity and purpose. Preparation isn't about expecting the worst. It's about creating the conditions for the best. So let me bring this all together. If you're at home when World War III starts, what happens next depends entirely on what you did before that moment. The choices you make in peacetime determine your fate in crisis. The knowledge you gather now becomes your toolkit later. The relationships you build today become your support network when everything else falls away. You're not powerless. You're not helpless. You're not at the mercy of forces beyond your control. You have agency. You have capability. You have time right now today to take steps that could change everything. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me this. If World War III started in the next hour, what's the one thing you're least prepared for? Be honest. Let's start a conversation in the comments about how we can help each other fill those gaps. This community is stronger when we share knowledge, and I read every single comment. And if this video made you think, if it opened your eyes to possibilities you hadn't considered, do me a favor. Send it to someone who needs to hear this.